Welcome back to White Noise. I'm here with my good friends and people I admire greatly, Ace and Sean.
Very mutual.
Yes,
So,
admire you as well.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about something that was inspired by Ozzy.
Right.
Ozzy just had a farewell show.
Yes.
And what I found myself thinking, and I've thought this many times in my life, we all deserve a farewell show.
Okay, I could agree with that.
In life, we work hard. We do a lot of things in life, and I felt that Ozzy got something that we all, is something that's marvelously special. And I continued my thought process, and I realized how many bands waste this opportunity. That in this world of farewell tours, most don't take it as a farewell, or many, I should say, don't take it as a farewell. And so I thought, well, let's chat a little bit about the value of these things and what they mean to us as fans and the band, and maybe how it all kind of plays out.
Well, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the quote farewell tour unquote has become one of the biggest cliches in the music industry. I mean, it is so rare that a band actually sticks to it that it's an effective marketing tool. I mean, you're playing on people's fear of missing out. They love this artist and they think, well, maybe this is going to be the last time. Maybe they're going to be true to their word. More often than not, that's not the case. I mean, you mentioned Ozzy. I mean, when I first started seeing Ozzy live in the 90s, he was on his retirement tour. He said, I'm done. This is it. I'm not going to tour after this anymore.
Right.
And he was out of the arenas for about 3 years, something like that. And then he came out with a new tour, and he actually named the tour Retirement Sucks. And he went back out on the road.
Right.
So when I hear a band say it's a farewell tour, there's a lot of different definitions of that, and I had one time where I actually got to be with a bona fide rock star when his band announced the farewell quote unquote tour, and I got to have a long discussion with him about it. A few years ago, Tom Hamilton, bass player for Aerosmith, was playing bass one summer with a band that I was taking care of. And I was actually in the Fort Lauderdale airport with him, waiting to get him on his flight, when I read on my phone, Aerosmith announces the Aero Rivederci tour that they're done. And I went, really? Are you really quitting touring? And he goes, well, he said, we are quitting touring in the sense of a world tour. Like, we're not going to put out a record and then hit the road for 2 years and support this record. But if, some South American promoter comes to us and wants us to do 16 shows down there and is going to pay us a boatload of money to do it, we're probably going to do it.
Right.
So
that's what it's all about, the money, right? It's not most of the time, but come on, let's face it. A band does a farewell tour and they offer a ridiculous amount of money. It's hard for them to say no, but, we'll talk about bands that kind of went against the grain on that, though. But,
I don't know. It's not about them. I don't think it's supposed to be about the money for a true artist.
Yeah,
a true artist is the problem, though. Having been an entertainment lawyer, I know that every artist that walks through the door is releasing the album that is better than the Beatles.
Right. You have to believe that.
You have to believe that. That's the nature of being an artist.
Right.
You can't stop the brain from working. I'm also struck, though, at how miserable the road is. And you hear stories about tours and farewell tours as being terrible experiences. Dire Straits, on every street. The band had a miserable experience. Mm-hmm. And don't tell me that Dire Straits ever toured again, because Dire Straits to me is Mark Knopfler.
Right. That was 91, 92, right?
Something like that. But the idea that Paul Simon came out with a farewell tour just a couple years ago, and I paid for those tickets because I know Paul is getting up there and he's about done, and I think maybe, and then all of a sudden he's not done anymore, and I was pissed. He damaged his brand to me,
Right.
and I found it disingenuous, and I mean, it's just, I find it completely disappointing. I think that that if you're not ready for a farewell tour, you shouldn't be telling your fans that. It feels something that is,
Well,
it feels like it's something wrong.
I think a lot of it's also what the motivation was for the tour. Like, for example, Neil Diamond is on his farewell quote unquote tour, but for a very different reason than most of these artists. He's got Parkinson's, and he knows that it isn't going to be much longer that he'll physically be able to do this. So he's doing one last big round and then saying, I'm done, because he's already having difficulties with the effects of Parkinson's.
Did he ever come back? Forgive me, did he ever come back? I thought that he was incapable of touring a few years ago.
Oh, no, it was just, I think he may still be doing the shows, or he just recently finished doing the shows. But, and then, probably one of the most notorious abusers of the, quote, farewell tour, unquote, is The Who. I don't know how many tours they've done where they said it was farewell, and they just kicked off their latest farewell tour about a week ago. And the problem there is kind of what you mentioned, though, and that is, like with Paul Simon, he's in his 80s. There's only going to be so much longer that he is going to be around to do these shows. Same with The Who. I mean, yes, Roger Daltrey's in fantastic shape. He'll probably be going on forever. But, they are in their 80s.
Right.
And there's a certain point where you kind of go, is this really what we want to do?
Yeah,
Right.
I feel like you damage it, and you can look also at sports figures. You look at Brett Favre, who for a variety of reasons he's damaged his brand. But the idea that you retire from football allows everyone a chance to say goodbye, and allows you the chance to say goodbye, and then you want to play again. And so you pick another team. So maybe you get another chance to say goodbye, a farewell season or something like that. And then you want to play again. And it undermines sort of the life principle that I'm suggesting is more valuable, which is the opportunity to allow closure. And it returns an industry that is really just about the buck, or it's just about something that's more negative. And music's supposed to be a positive experience, but
you really said it well there, that it is, when a band announces the quote farewell tour, I gotta quit saying that, but just the farewell tour, the hardcore fans of that, they're excited about the opportunity to see the last time around, and that's how they lead the story from that point forward in their lives. I saw the last LA show of blah 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 band back in whatever, and I know that when certain of those shows were going on, like I am. Don't kill me for this, but I'm not a big Slayer fan. I've really tried. They're just not really my ball.
I'm not going to kill you for that. Not only am I not going to kill you for that, I'm going to agree with that. So.
But Sean here is. And I've seen Slayer many times live. Fantastic live show. I love the guys in the band. They've always been kind to me. And when they played their last show, and that's how it was advertised here at the Forum in Los Angeles, to me it was a brilliant send-off, because not only had they gone and really, this was a pinnacle of their career. They had finally reached the heights to play the Forum. This band that had mostly just been theaters and small arenas. Now they were in the Forum, and the show sold out, and it was
2 nights.
2 nights. Everybody was going to see Slayer for the last time.
Yeah, they did.
And then they've recently started doing shows again. And I thought that sucks.
Yeah. Well, they did say they were done, but in the press they did say they were going to do special one-off shows for the fans. But it's just that music is very hard to tour with. That physically capable, physically
and I can't
distressful in the bottle.
I know that the shows that they're doing are headline slots at very prestigious festivals, and so those are lucrative shows monetarily, and we know when you hear the reports that Kerry King and Tom Herrera really don't communicate out after the retirement show in L.A., you start wondering, this has got to be for the money. Like, don't play this thing about for the fans.
Yeah. No, they kind of admitted it during a couple press conferences, or during some of the interviews that they were not going to tour anymore. They will do some special one-off show, but of course it's money. It's a lot of money on the table there. I know Tom Araya is physically incapable of touring because of his neck and having problems holding up the bass and stuff. So, yeah. But
and there's always a sense as to the hanger-ons. You can look at. You can look at Queen,
right,
which was Freddie Mercury and Brian.
Right.
I mean, in my opinion, that was the sound.
I'm right there with you.
And then Freddie's gone. Now, Freddie knew that was probably his farewell. Mm-hmm. Right in that, he knew he was sick, and he never told anybody really that he was sick. And so he had the opportunity to say farewell to us without us knowing we were saying farewell back.
That video for The Show Must Go On, where he died just shortly after doing it.
Yeah.
It's one of the most heart-touching things you could ever see.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of these bands, the Queen being a great example of, or you mentioned, we talked Dire Straits a little bit. I hate to cross the line and introduce Thin Lizzy into this because there are some personal relationships, and obviously, Ace, your renowned work with them, but the person that made the band was gone, and you have to try to reinvent something over time. And I don't consider that to be a violation of the farewell tour. I consider that to be people just trying to keep the spirit alive.
This is what I'm saying. You have those circumstances where an artist has passed away. I was talking to Sean about this earlier. I said, if Michael Anthony, Alex Van Halen, and David Lee Roth reformed with some other guitar player, say Zakk Wylde or something, would that be fair to call that Van Halen, or not? Would that be an egregious violation of the spirit of the band? I don't think so, because Eddie's passed on. I mean, what are you going to do?
All right.
But
well, we're not taking artistry away from the artist. The Traveling Wilburys with Dylan and George, and that that's not the Beatles, and it's not anything. It's just a different formulation of artistry, and there's
supergroup,
and that's something the fans can either like or not like as a brand new act.
But getting back to the monetary thing, there's been some what I would call egregious violations of the trust between fan and artist from that. I mean, probably the biggest one on that pile has got to be Motley Crue. I mean, when Motley Crue announced their farewell tour and they did this grandiose press conference where they all signed contracts stating that this is not BS, where it's a farewell tour, we're done after this, signed, dotted, sealed, and delivered. And then Netflix came out with a dramatization of their book called The Dirt, and it was a big hit. And it was a big hit among younger people too. And suddenly Motley Crue was back on tour because they said, well, it's not fair to all the young people who didn't get to see us before, and now they're fans from the Dirt movie, so we're going to go and do this.
I'm sure all that money that was offered.
Well, yeah, it was a joke,
Again, the money.
And the scariest part is that I know people behind the scenes of that camp, and everybody knew that it was a joke from the time they were signing the contracts. I remember talking to one of their agents, and I said, shortly after they did it, and I said, really? And he goes, yeah, right. So
going back to what started the conversation, I mean, the farewell Black Sabbath Ozzy tour is probably the best ever, best farewell tour ever. I mean, of course he passed and everything, but that's the best. If you want to talk about going out in style, I mean, that was the best farewell tour show, ever. But like bands that stuck to farewells, like we got George Michael. He did a final concert in 2008, and of course he passed away in 2016. But that was an artist that's stuck with farewell. Well, he passed now. Tina Turner as well. She did her farewell tour. She stuck with it. Barbra Streisand. She did a farewell tour, stuck with it. Phil Collins, talk about physically not capable of playing. That guy, from 2017 and 2022, he did a still not dead yet live tour, and he played as much as he can. And then right after he did that was solo. His solo career, and then he got back together with Genesis in 2022 to confirm his retirement after performing that tour, and then that was it. He physically can't play anymore.
You touched on something there which I think is worthy of discussing, and that is there are some bands or artists who didn't know they were on their farewell tour because they either passed or something grievous happened to them. Like when Motorhead did their last show over in Europe, and then he came, as was their tradition, they always at the end of the year would tour over in Europe, and then he would come home. His birthday was the 24th of December, and he would always go to Vegas because he didn't like people celebrating his birthday. He'd go to Vegas for a week and play the slot machines, which he loved to do. But that particular year, he did a show, and I think it was like less than 2 weeks after he did his final show that he passed away.
Yeah.
But I mean, all through his life, people joked that he was going to die on stage because that was, he was the true essence of rock and roll.
Right.
But I mean, right now, Kiss had a very, very big farewell thing ending in New York City, their hometown, and all of the bells and whistles. Now, there's an interesting one because during their farewell show, they announced that Kiss will continue, but in the form of holographic avatars. And so is that really a farewell tour? Yeah, I guess it is. But even so, they have subsequently booked shows. Like they're doing 2 shows in Vegas. One is some kind of a Kiss convention they're doing, and Kiss had very big success with their cruises, the Kiss cruises, and they're doing one in Vegas where they're taking over the Virgin Hotel and calling it a land-based cruise.
Yeah, it's hard to do a cruise out of Vegas.
Yeah.
Kiss is an interesting example of there has never been such a thing to me as a farewell tour because that band was so organized around monetary desires. Everything that they did was designed around, and it's not to disrespect the music. I love Kiss. I totally enjoy it, but I get completely blown away every time they finish a concert and try to sell another guitar for $5,000 because it was played on stage, or they do this, that, and the other. It is always about the dollar. But there are bands, and I wish I knew more about some of them that I wish were still out there. As a huge Kinks fan and things like that. I guess before doing that, I want to say, one of the opportunity to say goodbye. I think getting back to how special that is, and watching Warren Zevon finish his last record, and be interviewed by David Letterman and others while he's passing away, knowing that he was getting a chance to say goodbye to the fans. And as a Grammy voting member, I saw his name pop up on Album of the Year, and I thought, this is easily the greatest album. Somebody on his deathbed fighting every day to record for 5 more minutes to try to get this album out the door. And I thought it was marvelous. And I figured that the music industry was not as aware of Warren as I was. And then he ended up winning. And so I thought a spectacular way of having the ability to say goodbye.
Right.
And I don't know. I sit around sometimes and I wonder, I don't get a gold watch at the end of my time here at the studio.
Right.
You don't get to walk away in a place of glory.
Right.
You walk away. And these artists have an incredible opportunity.
Right.
Well, that brings up the difference between a reunion and a farewell tour. Like, let's take, for example, one of the biggest ones that's going on right now, Oasis. The 2 brothers have shook hands, reformed, and are doing bigger shows than they've ever done in their whole career. But is this going to be a farewell tour? I mean, originally when it was booked, it was going to be 5 shows in the UK. Then suddenly it was coming to the States. Then it was going to Australia. Now it's, and they're making buttloads of cash off of this.
This goes back to what I'm saying. Money plays a big role on a lot of these reunion
But
tours.
are they going to continue their partnership after this run, and thereby making this the Oasis farewell tour, or is this the harbinger of Oasis now being back in the picture?
Or are they going to just kill each other?
Or they're going to just kill each other?
You know, because that's the story of Ray and Dave Davies of the Kinks. The very first concert I ever saw, they got into a fight after 20 minutes. And I fought. I don't remember. I think I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I made a bet with my parents, and I won. And so I got to go to the concert. They were freaked out because I was taking the train to New York City to Madison Square Garden. It was crazy how much I worked to get to that concert. Everybody had their British invasion acts, and I was a Kinks guy. And sure enough, the brothers got into a fight on stage, and they had some more tours after that I got to see, but then they magically just sort of ended. It was all gone, and I would, as much as I would love to see them, you can only imagine the two brothers still deciding to kill each other on stage.
I've recently heard that they've decided they're going to put it together and go out again.
You think they'll pull it off?
I don't know. With age comes, a lot of the bitterness can get washed away with age. So,
And money.
Well, you don't know some of the older people I know.
Well, I mean, like there are other ones where you talked way earlier in this conversation about it potentially just being a misery being out with these people. I mean, there's a couple of examples that I can think of where artists talk to me. Back in the early 2000s, I worked with Roger Waters from Pink Floyd and did his merchandise on the In the Flesh tours. And one day I was in catering, and I had just heard or read a report that one of the promoters out there, I think it was Live Nation, was offering like $50 million to him personally if he would reunite with Pink Floyd and do a 2-year tour. And he said no. And I happened to see him in catering, and I timidly walked up to him and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Waters, can I ask you a question?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "I heard that you turned down $50 million to go tour with Pink Floyd." And he said, "That's right." And I said, why would you do that?" And he goes, "Ace, at this stage in my life, I've got more money than I'll ever be able to spend. The only thing I don't have buckets and buckets of is time. And the 2 years commitment of touring with Pink Floyd, people who I don't like, would be a misery. And I don't want to waste 2 years of my life doing that for money I'm never going to spend."
Right, with people he doesn't like.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's a remarkable thing. When you look at some of these tours, we're talking about 250 shows a year. Mm-hmm. And so it feels really special if you're an artist that wants to go on the road, and it's a pretty unique experience. But if every day is another hotel and another hotel meal or whatever you're eating and at some point this just adds up to pure monotony no matter how you cut it. And then on top of that, it's the same people, and I get it. I do think, though, about the opportunity, like what if we could form bands again? Like what bands would you die to see, that if you could get one more shot at them?
Well, for me,
Like, you're talking about bringing back people from the dead?
Bring
that
them.
would be my first question.
I think it's obviously an open question. I mean, for me, it's definitely the Kinks, and it's Queen. I would do anything to get to see Freddie. So I guess it's from the dead or the not dead.
Okay, well then, definitely Queen would be the top of the list. I would love to see Zeppelin back together. I've always dreamt about seeing Jimi Hendrix play.
Mine would be the Beatles.
The Beatles,
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, think about it. They didn't even have a farewell tour, right? They just ended it. And they decided that was it. They weren't going to do anything, and you got two major players dead now.
And another on his farewell tour.
Yeah.
Another one. Do you think if George and John were still alive, do you think we would have saw the Beatles do a tour together? I mean, think about
tour, maybe not a tour, but
Probably we would have
There would have
show.
been some special shows.
Yeah,
I
that
think.
money would have been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole show talking about theories on the Beatles and the breakup and the.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about farewell. Like they had their farewell, but they didn't.
But then you also have artists who are kind of robbed of some of their farewell. I mean, Electric Light Orchestra just was on their farewell tour, and they were going to culminate it with 2 amazing shows in London in Hyde Park. You know, I think it was like 50,000 people a night were coming to sing.
Yeah.
And the main guy got a parasitic infection and had to cancel the last 2 shows. And so it's kind of like a dud, like a big firework that was about to go off and then suddenly fizzles.
And it's interesting that you say it. I always think that every time I see an artist, it could be the last time. And including young artists. Noah Khan is touring, and I've seen him 3 times this year, and it's an incredible show. And every time I say, I've seen him 3 times now, that might be the last time. But we're getting to a point in rock and roll history now where a lot of rock and roll really was invented in the 70s. Modern rock and roll was invented in the 70s, and now these artists are on their farewells. And when you look at Springsteen, you look at Billy Joel, who was touring. I've seen him 3 times this year, and then all of a sudden has something going on in his head, cancels the rest of the tour.
Yeah.
Every time I go out, I think I may be watching the farewell performance, and I don't want it to be more Elton.
Yeah.
Although Elton's on his 2nd farewell tour in a row.
Now he's basically blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a reinvigorated farewell tour because of the COVID disruption. But yet now he's on another period of time where he's kind of trying to get the last little bit out of the stage.
I think that the other factor that's at play here that we really haven't discussed is that the reason that people are so excited about these farewell tours is that they obviously love the artist and they want to hear the songs that made them love that artist. But by their very nature, there are some artists who are just not interested in wallowing in nostalgia. I work with a gentleman who manages the Talking Heads, and David Byrne has resisted reuniting with the other members of the Talking Heads because they're very desirous of it, obviously.
And they never announced a farewell show. They just
stopped.
Yeah.
He decided he wanted to go do other things. But that's his thing. Is he's an incredibly creative force, and he doesn't want to go and just play the songs that he recorded 30 years ago. He wants to go and do new stuff and spend his life doing that. He's not concerned about the money and all that sort of thing. It's just the way it goes. I mean, Danny Elfman's another great example. Oingo Boingo, it would be a huge tour if Oingo Boingo reunited.
That's one of the bands that stuck with their guns, and that was it. Farewell, they never came back.
Yeah, they did a farewell show, and that was that. And Danny has no interest in doing it. He's now a soundtrack guy, and that's where he focuses his energies. So, I mean,
they did it right. Like those kind of bands, they stuck with their, this is farewell, we're going to stick with it. You got to be.
Yeah, it's an interesting contract that you have with your fans.
It is.
I was incredibly disappointed when I saw, and this is a different topic altogether, of what does an artist owe their fans, if anything at all. I know legally they owe nothing to their fans.
Right.
But when Elvis Costello went out on the road and decided he was not going to play a single old song.
Yeah, that pissed me off.
It pissed, and it's not. And I
saw that. I saw one of those shows.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
And
like, when is he going to play
the entire reason why that stadium is filled up is because of people who love not who you are.
No.
They only love what you have done. And you earn the next show every time you go out with that show. And so that is the relationship.
Right. What about a brilliant artist that have, like, let's say David Bowie, right? He had Ziggy Stardust, and then he ended that whole Ziggy Stardust thing, and then he reinvented himself. Mm-hmm. But you could say he farewelled his Ziggy Stardust point, and then he reinvented his music.
He still did songs from that album in future tours.
Well, yeah, like hit songs. But I'm just saying he literally cut that whole show out and just.
Well, I think that there's lots of artists who part of their big deal is their persona. I mean, Marilyn Manson, every tour he's got a different look.
Yeah.
Kiss would change their whole costumes every time they would go out. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm more talking about, I like that term you use, the contract with the fans. I mean, it's one of the things that bothered me a lot. Again, I worked with Iron Maiden during some of their tours, and Iron Maiden is one of the few bands I've ever seen who can go and do a show and like play their new album in its entirety, and then maybe one or two hits at the end, and the fans are okay with it. But at least most of them are. But the one thing you always get is, well, I didn't get to hear Number of the Beast, I didn't get to hear The Trooper, I didn't get to hear the songs that I grew up and loved. But they say, well, that's not what we're into doing. This is what we're doing. Take it or leave it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think if there's an understanding, that makes it a little bit different. The contract changes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think this is a great conversation. It's wonderful to have you guys join me on this little farewell tour ride, or the farewell fraud ride,
Right.
however you want to.
The cash grab.
And I'm going to keep looking for these bands. Jethro Tull, when they toured, I popped back out and caught a little Ian, rockin' flute, and thought it was one of the greatest nights I've had. And so, but this is White Noise, and we just made a lot more white noise tonight. So
Indeed. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
all right, we'll see you next time.